All right, you're live.
Good morning. I'm Vice Mayor Shanika Smith and the chair of the Public Safety Committee. I'd like to welcome you all to our September 27th meeting. All council members and staff are participating virtually. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We are streaming live on the Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website. We also have the option for the public to listen live by phone by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering the code 9477. For today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in live and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 9477. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, callers, we're here for more information or for more options, please press *3. Pressing *3 will allow the callers to continue to listen live and join the speaker queue. Public comment will be heard at the beginning and the end of the public safety meeting. Callers may comment only once during the general public comment session, either during the beginning or the end of the public comment period, not both. Callers will have 3 minutes each. We will be taking public comment after council and staff introductions. So if you would like to make a comment, please join the speaker queue by pressing *3. If you're watching the meeting through the live stream, and you are listening to the meeting by phone, please make sure that you turn your phone down, your volume down on your device before speaking. I'll go through now and introduce all committee members and staff who are participating virtually. Make sure your microphone is muted when you're not speaking. Councilwoman Kilgore.
Good morning, everyone.
Councilwoman Kim Roney.
Good morning.
City Manager Deborah Campbell.
Good morning.
City Attorney Brad Branham.
Good morning, everyone.
Police Chief David Zach.
Chief, we couldn't hear you. We still can't hear you.
Okay, while they're troubleshooting, Fire Chief Scott Burnett.
Good morning.
And APD Financial Business Manager Elise Lewis, and I think she's also on the line here with the Chief of Police and his staff. They're having a little trouble, so we'll take a brief moment for them to troubleshoot. And while they're working it out, I think we do have some folks in the speaker queue for public comment. So we'll go on and work through public comment. Jenna, do we have anybody in the speaker queue?
We do. I'll let you know when we get to the last caller. And caller ending in 2425, your line is open.
Thank you. My name is Tom Tesser, and my wife is here with me, Joyce Ridgey. We are residents of the Beaver Dam area in Asheville, and I have a few points that I want to go over. First of all, I want to unequivocally support both our fire departments and our police departments, because without a safe city, we are not a civil city. I have some specific issues I am going to take up. One is that Kim Roney, as far as I'm concerned, does not support our police. This woman on the council had voted to not accept a federal grant to give our police officers a bulletproof vests. And when it was going to come from a federal grant, not cost the city a penny. And to me, it's just absolute lunacy how you would not vote to protect our people who protect our citizens. Also, the fact that there does not seem to be support for our police department from city council, to me, is abhorrent. Year to date, some statistics, 59% increase in armed robberies. Violent crime is up 34% since last year. And this year, APD has investigated 78 armed robberies versus last year when they had 49, with a sharp increase in knives and impact weapons being used in armed robberies. Kim, specifically to you, you see violent crime is soaring, and yet you said, and I quote, "If we lose more officers and they leave Asheville, the streets will be safer." To me, what are you smoking? But you can't be serious when you say this. I would like to see somebody in office who would like to respond to the woman who was beaten with a bat and left in the river. Or how about the couple that was mugged at Beaver Lake? Or perhaps the person on Merriman who was jumped by 2 people and beaten with bats? Or maybe the woman's family who was left dead in a shallow grave under a pile of trash and needles? Or the recent homeless person who was beaten by a bat and his tent set on fire? It is not anecdotal, it is factual. It is experiential that we are experiencing an increase in violent crime. There are many residents in this city who are afraid to go downtown. My wife works in a small store across the street from Tops, and I am concerned about her being in that store alone all day with what is going on. She has already experienced one shoplifting incident, and this is just not acceptable. I could go on and on with the overdose deaths with fentanyl and us not accepting the high-intensity drug trafficking grants that these programs target. I don't know why you wouldn't accept that. I know there was a WLOS store.
Caller ending in 4192, your line is open.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to write in and encourage our APD. While we know our public safety member and Councilwoman Kim Romney doesn't support you, your community does, and we don't stand by her anti-police rhetoric at all. I want to call on Esther Manheimer to remove her from this committee. How does it make sense to have someone on a public safety committee that doesn't believe in supporting law and order and or the already struggling APD? Remove her now, as she does not represent me or the majority of your constituents, and we're respectfully done with her. Year to date, there's a 59% increase in armed robberies, violent crimes up 34% since last year. The APD has investigated 78 armed robberies versus last year when they had 49. Kim, you see violent crime is soaring, and yet you say, and I quote, "If we lose more officers and they leave Asheville, the streets will be safer." How is this acceptable? You see the rise in violent crime, and yet you still don't believe police officers need free bulletproof vests. Overdose deaths, specifically from fentanyl, are hurting our community, and yet for years you have voted down the high-intensity drug trafficking area grants that targets high-traffic areas of Asheville. I'd like to know what you would say to the families who lost loved ones to fentanyl overdose. Yesterday, there was a WLOS story where low-income neighbors begged for more police presence and support in their neighborhoods. You always use the Black and brown community as political chattel, and this is no different. All talk, no action. What do you say to them being a defund advocate? You claim to speak for the Black community, but you aren't even listening to their pleas for help. Your votes, words, and actions run counter to your duty to this city and the people you claim to represent. You should be ashamed to show your face on this committee. Esther, you should remove and put a council member in who actually works to represent the people of Asheville immediately, and we will not rest until this is done. Asheville, if this woman isn't removed, she will be instrumental in our downfall. Our police and our citizens deserve better than having this woman as a public safety committee member, a council member, and especially a mayor. I encourage you all to call for her removal, but mostly I encourage you to vote for Esther in November, because if you don't, Kim is what we're left with. And unless you want a mass exodus of APD officers who are already short-staffed and a further downfall of this city, that's what has to be done. And Kim, respectfully, you need to take a page from your own book and hashtag be about being better. Thank you.
Caller ending in 5988, your line is open.
Good morning, you guys. I just wanted to say thank you for giving the citizens of Asheville the opportunity to join this meeting today. Let me start by saying that I'm actually born and raised Michigan. I lived in Detroit. I left Flint. I was born in Pontiac. Years ago, when I was younger, those used to be the more violent cities, I guess you would say, with the headlinings and whatnot with the violent crimes. My family on my mother's side has roots here in Asheville, as they have ever since I can remember. My grandparents have always lived here. My aunt went to school here, so on and so forth. So as children, my sister and I always came to Asheville, and it was a city where there were, it was a better feeling of feeling safe and whatnot, as opposed to what I was used to coming from Pontiac, Flint, and Detroit. This is not the case recently. I don't feel that safety. I have two children. One is 17 years old, and he himself has experienced within our neighborhood, in our yard, in our front yard, and the feeling of not having the importance of the police being able to attend to our aid in immediate action. I could go on and on about this. If you go through our backyard, it's littered with needles, trash. Actually, this morning, as a matter of fact, we had an incident with a bear, but as we were dealing with that, my son had noticed that there was a man walking in the woods in the backyard. This is obviously a concern of safety. And in my opinion, I do not feel that Kim is actually focusing on these things. To get a little bit more personal before I cut this off, because I don't want to take all 3 minutes, I would like to allow other people to speak. I have seen the ramifications of the drugs that are taking over this city on a personal level within my family. There is way too much easy access for this. And I just feel that something needs to be focused on in a bigger light. And I just don't feel that woman to help us do that is Kim. Again, I'm a resident over on the east side of Asheville. And I think, as everybody knows, we've seen the increasing volumes of the lack of safety for our community. So thank you for listening to me. I really appreciate you guys.
Caller ending in 6539, your line is open. Caller ending in 6539, your line is open. Okay, I'll move on to the next person. Caller ending in 3684, your line is open.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Michael Lewis. I live in North Asheville, and I support a fully staffed and professional police force. I've probably been more critical of the police force than any other department in the city of Asheville, simply because probably I see more of the results of their performance or lack thereof. But I'd like to see a police department reform. I can't call a social worker about the guy who fires a .40 caliber automatic pistol out in front of my house at 5:30 on a Sunday morning, or about the parole violator down the street who strolled by my house with a couple of companions drunk twice one Saturday night, and then the next thing I hear is a woman say, "Get your hands off of me." I don't feel safe in Asheville anymore. Merriman Avenue and I understand Tunnel Road have become drag strips, and you'd think we never passed a noise ordinance from the sound of the mufflers out there. I support the chief and hope that he can recruit enough officers to come back up to speed. I think we do need some help from the social services. But 25 years ago, our legislature disbanded effectively the mental health system in North Carolina. So we're left with picking folks who need help up, taking them out to Copestone. They keep them for 3 days and turn them out again. And the cycle repeats itself. But I do not support defunding the police. Thank you.
Caller ending in 9966, your line is open.
Good morning. My name is Jim Fulton. I'm in South Asheville. I call for Esther Mannheimer and the other members of City Council to remove Roney from this committee. She is not representing me and appears to place her priorities on her personal agenda to hinder the police in their efforts to restore order in this once beautiful city where I can no longer go downtown. I have observed drug use and drug sales in the local grocery store parking lot. I can't call the police because they have more important things to be working on. They need to be solving aggravated assaults, rapes, murders. What is this woman doing on this committee? I mean, she's not helping. She has no interest in the public safety of the majority of citizens in this city. I hope that you can find some way to remove her from this committee. Thank you. Thank you.
Caller ending in 2266, your line is open. Caller ending in 2266, your line is open. Caller, I'm gonna unmute you. I think you have. We'll go back to them at the end. Caller ending in 2266. If you can mute whatever device you're watching the meeting on, I'll come back to you at the end. Caller ending in 0267, your line is open.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I live within the Asheville city limits, and I've lived here for about 20 years. I'm calling to lend my support for the current police force and the fire department. We really need them now more than ever, and I'm appreciative of the work that they are doing. I call for the mayor to remove Councilwoman Kim Roney from the Public Safety Committee, since her voting history has shown she does not support our police force. I feel unsafe for the first time since I've lived here, actually. This is really just a safety issue and is nonpartisan. I want our police force supported, and I oppose the defunding of our force. Thank you for your time.
Okay, caller ending in 0014, your line is open.
Yes, this is Everett Patillo. I'm a local. I was born and raised in Buncombe County. And, you know, the way the city has changed, you know, it's really becoming difficult for my family to even walk up and down the streets and enjoy, you know, beautiful Asheville. We have a great police chief, and anyone that does not wish to support him honestly needs to be removed from this committee. You know, Asheville has changed so much, and we just want to have it the way it was, where everyone can enjoy the freedoms of the mountains and enjoy the beauty of the mountains. So, you know, I respectfully request that Kim Rooney be removed from this committee because of her wishing to defund the police and non-support of the police in Asheville. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go back to caller ending in 6539. Your line is open. Okay.
I'd like to go ahead and pass on my time to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, caller ending in 2266. Your line is open.
Hi, this is Grant Millen. I'll speak at the very end of the meeting. Thank you.
That was our last caller.
Okay, that concludes the public comment portion of our agenda. We'll move on to approval of the minutes. Did everybody have an opportunity to review the minutes? And if so, if no questions, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from August?
This is Kim, so moved.
This is Sandra, second.
I'll do a roll call vote for approval. Councilwoman Kilgore,
Aye. Yes.
Councilwoman Roney,
Aye.
and myself, minutes are approved. We'll next on our agenda, we have the addendum to the current 5-year Axon contract for body worn cameras, taser program, fleet vehicle in-car cameras, and interview room. And Elise Lewis from APD is presenting that. Elise?
Thank you. Okay, next slide. So our key takeaways are to request to add additional funding to the existing contract we have with Axon for unlimited annual payments that were omitted in error from our original contract terms, and move the Axon contract addendum forward to full council for approval. Next slide. The Asheville Police Department entered into a new consolidated 5-year contract with Axon on December 15th of 2020 for our existing body-worn camera taser program, our fleet vehicle in-car camera program, and our interview room platform. We had previously been managing 3 separate 5-year contracts for these programs. Each had a different start and end date, as well as different invoicing dates. The intent of creating this new 5-year contract was not only to simplify the management of these different contracts into one document with one annual invoice, but also to afford APD the additional benefit of locking in the 2020 price points for the new 5-year life of our consolidated contract. When Axon generated the consolidated quote for the new contract, the original 5-year terms for licensing from each of the original contracts was retained instead of extending them through the end of this new 5-year contract's term. These unlimited annual payments include storage on evidence.com, product warranties, and the licensing of our equipment. Next slide. This contract amendment will add in these required missing fees for our fleet vehicle cameras for the last 3 years of the contract, as well as the missing fee for our interview room platform for the last year of the contract, at the price points they would have been originally included in back in 2020. These fees should have been included in the new 5-year contract in December of 2020, and we're asking to add them in now at the same price point they were quoted when the contract was initiated. The total increase in cost over the final 3-year period of the contract to correct this oversight is $345,990.68, and City Council approval is required. Next slide. So the requested action is to move the Axon contract addendum forward to full council for approval.
This is Kim. I suggest that we move the contract addendum forward to full council for approval.
This is Sandra. I'll second.
I'll do a roll call vote for approval. Councilwoman Kilgore,
Aye.
Councilwoman Roney,
Aye.
and myself. Action moves forward. We'll move to the next discussion on the agenda. Chief Zach, he's going to provide us an update on violent crime data and strategies.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Next slide, please. Key takeaways from this presentation. Although violent crime trends are discouraging, APD is committed to ensuring Asheville is a safe place to live, do business, shop, recreate, and visit. Year-to-date violent crime is trending at a historically high rates, and that's occurring both nationally and here in Asheville. Asheville's increase in violent crime is driven primarily by a 44% increase in aggravated assaults. In spite of the serious deficit of resources, APD is aggressively deploying officers to respond to various types of crimes, especially violent crime. To effectively address increasing crime in our community, we must reimagine and assume public safety as a responsibility of every sector of our community. Next, please. What this slide depicts is just basically a steady rise in violent crime from 2013 to 2021. Violent crime is defined as homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault, according to the FBI Uniform Crime Reporting Program. Next, please. This is our year-to-date violent crime. You can see between 2021 And today, a very, very sharp increase in violent crime so far in 2022 versus 2021. Next, please. This is kind of an overall view of the city, and where though those sharp areas in red are where our violent crime is occurring. In the center of the map there, that's primarily in our downtown area and in some of our public housing, affordable housing complexes. But it seems to be very well concentrated, but as you can see, it is spread out pretty much between 8 and 9 different areas in the city where we're seeing the majority of violent crime occurring. Next, please. Violent crime includes homicide. The highest number of homicides in the last 10 years was 12, and that was reported in, or that occurred in 2018. We've already had 11 victims of homicide so far in 2022. Next, please. Again, the sharp increase in violent crime is mostly attributed to aggravated assault, where we've seen a 44% increase from 2021 to 2022. Just so you know and understand, aggravated assaults needs to involve serious injury or the use of a deadly weapon to be categorized as aggravated assault. So definitely a sharp increase from 2021 to 2022 year to date. Next, please. And you can see, similar to the overall violent crime rate, when we map that out, it's occurring generally in the same areas. And I think you'll see that consistent with all of the violent crime that we're dealing with, that it's generally the same areas. Next, please. Robbery, year to date, not a historic high, but definitely an increase over where we were in 2021, where we've seen a 31% increase in robbery. Again, not to the historic levels we saw in 2014, but still a significant increase from last year. What's of more a concern to us, if you'll go to the next slide, is the increase in armed robbery. This is with the use of a weapon, where we've seen a 50% increase from 2021 to 2022. Again, a sharp increase in armed robberies. Next. And again, what we're seeing, which is consistent with all of our violent crime, generally occurring in the same areas. And this is where we're deploying the majority of our resources at this particular time. Next, please. This is really, when we're looking at our violent crime, when we're dealing with sex offenses and rape, this is the only area where we have seen a decrease, a 23% decrease from 2021 to 2022. But as we go to the next slide, again, the areas where we're seeing these offenses committed are generally in the same areas. And again, this is where we're deploying our resources most heavily. Shots fired call. This was a concern of us that we brought to the attention of public safety back in 2020 when we saw a record number of shots fired calls. We made a concerted effort to reduce the number of those calls through the deployment of our officers in areas where those shots fired calls were occurring. We saw a decrease in 2021, and we're continuing to see a decrease in 22. So that is a positive sign that we're seeing, we're responding to fewer shots fired calls. However, next, please. What we haven't seen is a decrease in the number of people being hit by gunfire. So you can see we had in 2020, we had 32 persons struck by gunfire. We did see a reduction in 2021, but in 2022, we are now back to the 2020 number, which obviously is a tremendous concern to us. Next, please. So what are we doing? Again, although the violent crime rates are discouraging, we are committed to ensuring Asheville is a safe place to live, do business, shop, recreate, and visit. But we cannot do it alone. Next, please. In 2020, and you've heard me talk about our tip line many, many times, it continues to be very successful. We're continuing to get a large degree of community support. We've received over 3,200 submissions since its launch in December of 2020. So far in 2022, APD has received 1,287 tip submissions through our tip line. On average, we receive 100 tips from the community per month. Next, please. In late 2020, the APD Drug Suppression Unit was rebranded as the Impact Team. Their goal was to reduce gun crime in the city. Simultaneously, a gun violence firearm offender working group was formulated to handle major gun crime investigations. This group, which is led by APD, includes attorneys from the DA's office and the U.S. Attorney's Office. Our federal partners, ATF, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, DEA, State Probation, Parole, and ALE are all part of this working group. The Impact Team and working group have accounted for 181 arrests, seized 78 firearms, and recovered extensive amounts of illegal drugs. Their efforts brought in the largest seizure of fentanyl on record in the history of Buncombe County, and that was in March of 2022. Next, please. We're deploying our resources based on data. In March of 2022, we hired a new crime analyst. A data-driven approach to crime prevention involves the analysis of calls for service and incident data in order to develop patrol and investigative priorities and inform the deployment of resources. Our crime analysts focus on identifying and investigating crime patterns, long-term statistical trends, hotspots, repeat offenders, criminal organizations, and networks. Our forensics unit is an area that we've made significant progress in. I would dare to say in Western North Carolina, we have one of the best trained, best equipped forensic units out there. We've already invested in Ballistics IQ, which is a portable device that allows firearm cartridges to be scanned and analyzed more quickly to link gun crime investigations together. We are in the process of purchasing a rapid DNA analyzer, which will return results in 90 minutes, as opposed to what might be a 6 to 8 month wait on property crime investigations. 4 APD forensic techs will be attending the National Forensics Academy in Knoxville, Tennessee for 10 weeks of advanced forensic training. We intend to have the best trained forensic techs in this state, and we will continue to ensure that they are the best equipped. Our staffing needs and concerns are well documented. APD and city management teams continue to work to ensure wages and benefits are competitive in the law enforcement marketplace. We will have 12 officers completing their field training, and they will be on the road in November of 2022. We have 12 officers currently in basic law enforcement training. They're scheduled to graduate in November of 2022 and complete field training by April of 2023. So we do have 24 replacements in the pipeline. However, we have to caution, historically, not all will graduate and not all will pass field training. A little bit of a discouraging note is we only have 7 applications for the January 2023 BLET class, but we're hoping that our recruiting effort will increase those numbers. Next, please. After the contract with Epic Recruiting was approved by council in December of 2021, Epic began on-site filming and photography in March of 2022. The new recruitment website, as well as the accompanying social media pages, launched on September 2nd. Digital advertising was launched on September 19th. A combination of organic social content along with ad campaigns is used to build an audience tailored for recruitment initiatives. Social media content from newly launched platforms on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube is tailored to increase recruitment awareness and drive interest. We will start to see the back end analytical data in the coming weeks, in the early part of October, to see where our hits are coming from, and then target those areas more specifically. Next, please. We are pursuing partnerships to incorporate a violence interruption strategy, partnering with other community groups, the county, and non-for-profits to strengthen relationships between APD and community members, especially youth. We recently co-sponsored an event at Stevens Lee, partnering with United Way, UNC Asheville men's basketball team, Clutch, Parks and Recreations, and Mecca of Beacon LLC. It was a very well-attended event. A good time was had by all. We made significant inroads with our community outreach there. APD and AFD are coordinating together with the county to develop a community responder pilot program that I believe we're going to hear more about. And the goal of this initiative is to proactively address issues related to those that are unsheltered and or experiencing addiction or behavioral health issues. So again, violent crime trends are discouraging, and APD is doing all it can. We are trending at a historically high rate, but this is occurring both nationally and in Asheville. The increase in violent crime has been driven primarily by a 44% increase in aggravated assaults. In spite of the serious deficit of resources, APD is aggressively deploying officers to respond to various types of crimes, especially violent crime. But to effectively address increasing crime in our community, we must reimagine and assume public safety as a responsibility of every sector of our community. With that, I'll take questions.
Any questions from the committee?
This is Kim. I have a couple of questions. One of the data sets that I didn't see is resident and daytime populations and when the incidents of violent crime are happening. So if we were to get a follow-up report, I think those resident and daytime populations by year going alongside would be a helpful data set to have, especially as we consider the impact of tourism and the burden on taxpayers to pay for infrastructure and public services for that industry. Additionally, I do agree that we can't do it alone. We did see 2 applications come through the ARPA COVID-19 relief fund process that weren't funded. And I wondered if our staff considered funding those applications within our operating budget as potential pilot programs for improved public safety response.
Vice Mayor, I don't know if that's a question to staff or
It
not.
is a question to staff. Have we considered funding those improved public safety response applications within the COVID-19 ARPA funds within our operations budget since they weren't funded with COVID-19 funds?
No, we have not, and I can't say that I'm very familiar with those particular proposals, but what I can say is that we would not be able to absorb them within our current budget. That's why we've been so heavily dependent upon federal, state, and other types of funding.
So to add to the understanding and also for the public benefit, I would like to support our staff considering providing direction to at least research those 2 ARPA applications, one for the transit center and one for downtown central business district, because we're currently not meeting our public safety obligations and continue to have staffing issues. So something like that could come perhaps to a future public safety committee meeting.
And just to remind you all that you still have about 1.3 million of ARPA funding yet to be allocated. And it's up to you all if you want to consider some of these other initiatives going forward.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee for Chief Zach? All right, with no other questions. Thank you, Chief Zach, for presenting us that information and the strategies you all are using to help offset crime in our city. We'll move on to a point that you mentioned within your presentation about community responder teams. Chief Scott Burnett will be presenting that.
Good morning. Thank you, Vice Mayor. So I'd like to provide some information to the committee about a pilot program. And we have 4 key takeaways relative to this program. And the first is currently the City of Asheville's resources are focused on short-term, focused on the acute. City of Asheville resources, we don't have a lot of ability or capability to address long-term care options related to folks who are experiencing behavioral health issues, those who are unsheltered, those who are experiencing addiction. Often those issues are overlapping. So in alignment with City Council's Reimagining Public Safety strategic priority, we are looking at developing a multidisciplinary community responder pilot program to be able to respond to these issues and provide not only the short-term solutions that we are able to do right now, but the long-term solutions is what we are hoping to be able to accomplish for folks who are experiencing these overlapping issues. And the community responder pilot program, we're currently just in the development phase, and over the next few months, we're going to be coordinating with a lot of stakeholders to finalize this concept. And we will likely be coming back to this committee in November to update on the progress of the program. So currently, when someone is having an emergency, a crisis, typically the City of Asheville resources are dispatched to assist these folks via 911. Somebody calls 911 and describes a situation, or an individual has a medical emergency, they call 911 themselves. And so that's frequently how the City of Asheville resources interact with those in our community that are experiencing addiction, behavioral health crises, folks who are unsheltered that have emergencies. And so those resources are our firefighters and our police officers, and they do an amazing job responding to those situations and have a good ability to assist those folks with their acute issues with the short term. We also contract with Homeward Bound to do some proactive outreach services for unhoused residents and connecting them to available community resources. Our police officers and firefighters also do this daily as we interact with folks who are unsheltered. So we have a need to leverage our existing resources in the community, which are many, and enhance those partnerships with other governmental and nonprofit agencies to be able to address not just those short-term issues, but that long-term support, which certainly is a big void. We will be coordinating heavily with the Buncombe County Community Paramedic Collaboration, and just to spend a few minutes talking about the county's community paramedic program and how the City of Asheville's community responder pilot program will support and be complementary for this program. So the Buncombe County Community Paramedic Program, their primary role and mission is to focus on opioid addiction and those follow-up services. Clearly, our Buncombe County Community Paramedic are amazing folks and do amazing things and do a lot of additional things in our community for people in our community in addition to just that opioid addiction. But that is their primary role and what they are equipped, trained, and experts at for folks who are suffering with opioid addiction and those follow-up services. So what our community responder pilot program will likely do is collaborate and support that community paramedic program when it comes to that opioid addiction, but also increase the access to community resources in a similar manner for folks who are unsheltered and experiencing behavioral health issues and complementing that addiction support. as well. So our proposed community responder pilot program would be a cross-departmental, multidisciplinary team, City of Asheville employees that have a knowledge of the existing resources available to assist those in crisis and be able to provide immediate response to those who are unsheltered, suffering from addiction, experiencing behavioral health, and as we talked about, often those crises are overlapping as well, and coordinate with all of those support agencies in our community for those long-term solutions and that wraparound care to focus on beyond the acute and the short term as we have the ability to do now. One very important outcome of this responder pilot program would be to collect data and to continue to identify and define where those current gaps are in our community, and to inform this committee, to inform council, to inform our decision makers for where those current gaps are and where solutions and resources need to be applied. Building those relationships within the community, becoming a more visible presence in responding to those issues associated with folks who are unsheltered, addiction, behavioral health issues, and also to serve as a resource to those who live in our community, as well as business owners related to these overlapping issues. So what are our next steps for this proposed pilot program? And right now, the immediate thing to do is to identify what those key components of that potential pilot program would include. To continue to review and look at similar models from other cities. Identify those key partners within our community, both governmental and nonprofits. Look at a possible geographical area within our city to pilot the program, and then develop an action plan to implement the program. And clearly that would need to include a budget, what that interdepartmental approach is related to staffing and what resources, and then what roles our partners would have, specifically the Buncombe County's Behavioral Health Justice Coalition, our community paramedics with Buncombe County, all of our nonprofits in our community, and also the Department of Health and Human Services. So in summary, our key takeaways again are currently we have the ability to respond for the acute, for the short term. We don't have a model currently that adequately addresses long-term care options and solutions. And so in alignment with City Council's Reimagining Public Safety strategic priority, we're looking at developing a multidisciplinary community responder pilot program to address those very long-term care options and issues. We are currently in the development phase, and over the next several months, we'll coordinate with our stakeholders in the county and our nonprofits to finalize this concept, and likely we'll be coming back to this committee in November with an update on the progress of the development of this program. So that I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions, Scott, but I'd like to basically commend you on this program. This is something that is much needed, and I appreciate you spearheading this process. And I really think it will definitely make a big difference in our community by bringing everyone on board and having someone to actually oversee the process. And also would like to just also thank Police Zach, Captain Zach, with this report, because basically by being able to see the positive results of the EPIC program, being able to increase the amount of policemen in this set amount of time, this is really good to hear. And I'm excited about the overall process as we move forward. Thank you.
This is Kim. I have a few questions, but to start and to echo appreciation. Thank you for looking at this opportunity to diversify our public safety response and add to our toolkit. I am curious, as we are considering this, can we plan on getting an update from the Buncombe County Community Paramedicine? We haven't heard from them in a while. I expect they have new data sets and outcomes since the last time they presented.
Absolutely, Ms. Ronnie. When I get to the future agenda topics in the committee work plan, it is scheduled for an update in November at the same time when we're having a community responder team update as well. So we can see kind of the integration of those initiatives.
I did see that. Thank you.
Scheduled in November.
So I am curious about duplicating services while we're understaffed. For the agenda in November, I wonder what it could look like to have a capital and operations cost comparison when we look at piloting our own program versus contracting with the county who has existing and growing services that are so closely connected to their core service of health and human services. And then also, what is the cost of staff time to prepare and develop this program when there's one that exists. So I think I want to hold the container for both excitement that we're finally getting some traction on doing our own program, and also when I see just transit as an example with having 2 management facilities, 2 sets of staff, 2 sets of capital costs. What is the cost to Asheville and Buncombe taxpayers if we risk duplicating something like this again? So some of those side-by-side comparisons for capital and operations would help me better understand that.
Yeah, and at this point in time, we will not be able to do that effectively because, again, we are just kind of launching and thinking about this program. Maybe January, February, we will have a little bit more information and can go into a little bit more detail. And again, we have thought a lot about whether this is duplicating efforts. We think that it isn't. But I will let Chief Burnett speak to that more.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to make sure that this is completely complementary and not a duplication or even competitive. That's probably not the best word, but we have been talking with Taylor Jones with Buncombe County and Claire Hubbard with Buncombe County specifically as we talk about this idea, and they are completely in support of this complementary program to expand the capability. The community paramedic program is specific to opioid response, and as they respond, clearly they do a lot of other things, just like our police officers and our firefighters do every single day, and every approach that they have with folks that are having crises in our community. The goal, the intent, the outcomes of this program are to meet what is currently unmet, that the community paramedic program is not able to meet with both their resources, their staffing, their mission, and their scope. We want to be able to focus on those behavioral health issues, those unsheltered issues that the community paramedic is not able to meet currently. But very importantly, to your point, is to make sure that this always is a conversation and a partnership that is complementary with Buncombe County's existing, not just their community paramedic program, but as you pointed out, their health and human services mission. So many of the roles that they have. We have a seat, fortunately, at the table, multiple departments within the city of Asheville of Buncombe County's Behavioral Health Justice Coalition as an example. And so that's one platform, one venue that we talk about these types of things, just to make sure we're not being redundant, we're not duplicating efforts, that we're being as efficient and synergistic as possible, and not competing or duplicating any efforts and precious resources.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Chief Burnett. So I'll still be looking for, even if there's a delay, I know we already have staff looking at capital improvement project asks and operations budget. We're starting to get ready for seeing those come together for the next fiscal year. So we'll still be asking those questions about budget impact.
Absolutely. And it looks like that we just got some information from the mayor that was forwarded to us regarding the community paramedics program that has the matrix and probably some of the information that you're interested in, Ms. Ronnie, but we'll still plan to come back in November to provide you with additional information.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And Deborah, while you're speaking, could you go into the work plan for the future public safety meetings?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity just to update you on what is happening with each and every one of our council committees. We are trying to kind of telegraph, foreshadow things that you all will be discussing related to, some are calling it a work plan, others committees are framing it as just agenda topics. So both the committee as well as the public will have an idea of items that will be discussed by this committee. And so essentially in October, we will have, you heard the chief talk about the EPIC recruitment effort of trying to recruit additional police officers. We think we may have some data that we can share with you. We can also share with you some of the postings that we have on Facebook and through social media outlets. There's interest in our Asheville Police Department's integrity unit. We want to provide you with an update on that. And there's one item that was inadvertently omitted, and that is the continuity of operations plan update. We gave you all a kind of a brief overview in, I believe, August of the continuity of operations. And this is essentially a part of our kind of climate resiliency and just resiliency in general related to some type of emergency that might occur in our community. Grant review and approvals is something that we have probably monthly. Whenever we have our committee meetings. So I repeated that throughout the rest of the upcoming year. So in November, as we said, we'd have the community responder team update, the community paramedic team update, and then potentially grant review and approvals. December, we're not sure if we're going to have a meeting. It's really close to the holidays for Christmas. So we'll provide you with additional information probably in either October or November with a slotted agenda for December, agenda item for December. And then in January, we wanted to come back with violence interruption initiatives to talk about, kind of results of what you were presented by Chief Zach, as well as the county initiatives related to violence interruption. And that will happen in January. Those are the items that we have slated for the committee's review and information sharing. And I don't know if you all feel that we have covered things that you were interested in or items that you have asked us to provide you with to come to this committee. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Mayor, to see if there's any additional items you would want us to include for discussion.
If we can keep this slide up so we can take a moment for the committee members to look over the items that will be covered throughout the year and entering into the next year to see if anything comes to mind.
This is Kim. So I think when we talk about violence interrupter programming, and I appreciate that it's on the January agenda, one of the things that we heard in June was specific need to address violence among our youth and what youth mentorship programming can look like. So if we could just go ahead and explicitly put in January, it's violence interruption and youth initiatives. I think that our community needs to see some meaningful action on that. Additionally, we heard about climate justice updates. I imagine we'll need to hear something about that as we get into budget season and how we're impacting neighborhood resiliency as a strategic priority. I've already mentioned this today, but capital improvement project budgets, an update on 911. I'm not sure how that fits with what the action we've taken around our 911 initiatives. But the biggest one for me that's missing right now is a 6-month budget update. So sort of what we've budgeted to do and if our budget is meeting those needs, but also do we have deficits, surpluses, some sort of even just general basic department analysis of whether or not we're meeting our goals. I know, for example, a lot of folks would say if we're down in staffing, wouldn't we have a surplus? I know that's not necessarily the case when we're paying overtime, but it would be good for us, I think, to have a sort of a 6-month marker of where we're at so we know where we're going.
And Ms. Ronnie, we are scheduled to provide full council a quarterly updates around the budget, including an assessment of the capital improvement program budget as well as our operating budget. And I'm hoping that that would suffice and not have to come through a specific committee unless there was additional information that you wanted specific to public safety.
There is, and part of it is because we saw last year that there was a capital improvements surplus and that it was allocated at the very last minute. So it would help me to know, are we in the same position again? If so, does the full council need to hear about where our public safety budget is? I imagine so. But if we were able to get into the weeds a little bit more here, that would be the purpose of this committee, in my opinion.
Okay, I'll have to simmer on that one and think of how we provide that information that's public safety specific.
Sandra, anything not on the agenda for you before we move on? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll move on to public comment for the people who are left in the speaker queue to speak last.
All right, caller ending in 2266, your line is open.
Hi, Grant Millen, longtime Asheville resident. The NC Department of Health and Human Services Excel file I sent to Buncombe County Commissioners and now to the PSC this morning is not data to ignore. The fentanyl death to emergency room overdose treatment ratio appears to be about 2 to 6. So 6 emergency room treatments, there are 2 deaths out in the field, out here in Asheville mostly. The data is just says if this is about Buncombe, it's obviously going to relate to Asheville criminality and fentanyl use. There needs to be a public centering with COA leadership as to these deaths. In terms of demographics, most likely it will become clear that a lot of people under 30 are dying. These are criminally related deaths, and in legal terms, at least considered wrongful deaths. And those lives and the surviving family members deserve to see that data as part of what COA public safety means. So the data about violence and criminality, if you're leaving out these fentanyl deaths, you're lowering the deaths in a major way. There's all kinds of other destruction that's being generated by the profiteering from fentanyl in Asheville. I agree these are public health issues too. Death is a health issue. Criminality-centered deaths are about public safety. Without COA being honest about the impact of illegally manufactured fentanyl in Asheville and Buncombe, that isn't strategy as to identifying the true nature of the challenge. I asked for 20 years of Asheville crime data. It's good to see 10 years being used now, but people will really get oriented to the public safety picture in Asheville if you've been a long time like I have. Between 2002 and 2022, the crime situation is completely different. And 10 years kind of shows some change, but it really going back to 2002 is what's needed. And Kim doesn't seem to be concerned about this, calls for her removal. I wanted to say that Shanika on the 23rd during council, you started to talk about the federal asset forfeiture seizure policy, and people think that that the seizures happen before arrests or convictions. And the mayor kind of intervened with you. We've got a council code of conduct, and there's part of that that talks about knowing the law, but it was kind of contemptuous because the mayor seemed to have briefed you on what was really going on with federal asset forfeiture seizures. And I could go on
you're
about
at 3 minutes. Caller ending in 5584, your line is open.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Honor Moore. I'm a North Asheville resident. I grew up in Asheville. Probably have lived here collectively between childhood and adulthood and motherhood for 34 years. I want to first off say I'm grateful to our public servants for the amount of time they spend and for how so little they're paid to go to numerous hours worth of meetings. So I just want to tell you guys, I know many of you, my daughter just graduated Asheville High School, and to Grant's point, which I really appreciated, the fentanyl, it's really scary to parents, and it's really real. And there's a student that was recently lost. It's just horrific from the standpoint of being a mother, because kids are at ages where they just make the stupidest, most impulsive decisions, and they have no idea when they make that decision that they might take their life. And I feel like as a community, again, I really appreciated Grant's words. Why don't we have a campaign in our community that really is vocal and educates? It's so scary. So the other thing I want to say, it's really unpopular to say, but a lot of people are seeing a huge difference in our city recently, like really recently, in transient population. And we don't have measurable tools, but we see it with our eyes. And as I've been getting around town and talking to merchants, like one business had $30,000 worth of stuff stolen off of Charlotte Street. We're seeing more panhandlers going all the way north on Merriman, begging in every parking lot in the city. People are afraid to actually now wait at certain bus stops, such as the one by Trader Joe's. We've got encampments now all over the city. And as a former teacher, I can tell you children in a classroom need boundaries. They need expectations. As a person who's been a member of a recovery community, had addiction in my own family of origin, anybody in the recovery community will tell you people you can't enable, you kind of got to come up with the system here for our city. I unequivocally support the Asheville Police Department, Fire Department, all of the staff, actually. Y'all are great people. But we have to figure something out. A lot of people are saying the DA's office is too soft now. The police need to feel some community support. So shout out to Chief Zach, shout out to the police department. And we can simultaneously support the police department, care for the homeless, set boundaries in our city so that we can all successfully live here. But we
Caller,
do not, as citizens. Thank you.
That was our last caller.
Any lasting comments from the committee? All right, if not, this meeting is adjourned.